universities and research institutions are studying this because they're finding that it basically transforms everybody's life when they get connected to it. So that's where we're going to move tonight. And at the end, I've got a couple free gifts for you all to take this work forward if you so choose. But before I do, I just want to share a little bit about how I came into this work. Because, there's probably a few hundred purpose guides in the world. And that's going to change. We're training a bunch of them right now. But I came into this work because I grew up in the Midwest, and we didn't have a purpose conversation. Anyone here from the Midwest? All right, right on. So if you had a meaning question, at least growing up in Chicago, that wasn't answered by the Catholic Church or the Chicago Bears, you were pretty much screwed. and so I had the good fortune to kind of check all the boxes of the traditional American dream. Went to a good school, began my career in venture capital and investment banking, startups, and I couldn't figure out why I was unhappy. I was like, I did all the things. You said if I did the things, I'd have the life. And how it actually manifested was that I didn't even have the language to say I didn't know my purpose. Because in Chicago in the 80s and 90s, that wasn't even a question. And so I took to drinking and drugs like a lot of people. Anyone here turn to drinking and drugs? Okay. Yeah, it depends on which ones, right? And I approached it with a kind of unusual fervor that had me in jail in 6 different states by the time I was 30, or 28 actually. So there, my predictable future was probably something bad, right? A colostomy bag or a DUI, or it was going south pretty quickly. And I had the good fortune to then begin my own work in my late 20s, which is a great time to begin inner work. I mean, it's a great time anytime after that, but the late 20s is really special because that's when you've tasted enough about how unworkable the world is. You've had a few jobs, and luckily this is also when your neocortex starts to mature and you can start to grasp abstract concepts like, what is the meaning of my life? So that's when I began my inner work, and I was actually in business school when this happened in New York, and while my colleagues went back to Wall Street and McKinsey, I came out here with all the hippies and the freaks, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to find my purpose. I'm going to figure out what life is out here, and just did the entire Bay Area find yourself seen. Landmark, men's work, hallucinogens, Burning Man, nonviolent communication, Vipassana, going to India, just like somebody tell me what's actually going on with myself, with the world. And it was all great, and I got to clean up a lot of ignorant behavior, obviously. If I had been arrested a bunch, I'd hurt a lot of people. But I still didn't have any sense of my purpose. It was still just this I was bouncing around from this social enterprise to this startup to that nonprofit to teaching at universities. I'm like, is this it? Is this it? It was that needle in a haystack approach. Anyone tried that needle in a haystack approach? Yeah. That's oh, how about this? I need community. Oh, I need to make an impact. Oh, I need a sweet apartment. Oh, I need a great girlfriend. Oh, all these things, this kind of external orientation that one day a context is going to be perfect for me. And so I got to work with a purpose guide in my early 30s and studied with him, or studies, not the right word, but worked with him for 6 months. And after that, it was just clear as day. It was hands down the most transformative work I'd ever done. I got clear all the stuff that wasn't me and had this wide open channel to keep hearing what really was true for me. And within about a month, I left my startup job in Palo Alto, left San Francisco, moved to Berkeley, launched a purpose-driven venture, and shortly thereafter started actually guiding others and did my training with the Purpose Guides Institute. So I've been working with executives and teams since 2012, began doing online programs and writing books in 2015, and basically here we are. So now I get to bring this conversation, this work to you all, but also some really unconventional places like Morgan Stanley and Johnson & Johnson and the U.S. Marine Corps and Tesla and Facebook. And there's all these places now that are just like, they're ready for it. And that probably wasn't the case 10 years ago. So that's how I came into this conversation. How do I advance the slides? Do I just hit forward? Let's try this. Oh, there we go. So this is a little bit kind of a summary of what I'm up to now. I've got an online program that has put a couple thousand people in from 50 different countries. And my book, Planet on Purpose, which Kim mentioned, I had been working on for 5 years and just came out in March. Really excited about it. The guy who wrote the foreword called it the most comprehensive book on purpose ever written. So I'm like, if none of you ever buy it or read it, that's enough for me. Like this, because I really respect Tim Kelly. He's the founder of the True Purpose Institute. So that's me. And I want to share with you a little bit about, actually I want to wait for that, share with you a little bit about what purpose is. Because we live in this kind of sea of purpose washing. We all know what greenwashing is? Yeah, like when Clorox says it as an environmentally friendly product. And saffron washing, when Google makes the world safe for advertising and then says we all need to meditate. So purpose washing is very similar. There's a lot of consumer products companies, a lot of marketing agencies all talking about adding purpose, like it's the next bolt-on to a company or next bolt-on to your life. But it's actually something much more sacred than that. At least my experience of it is. So I hold it as this bone-deep identity. So it's distinct from passions. Right? We all have multiple passions. Like I love whales and karaoke and watching my fiance sleep, and I like being on a stage, and I like construction, and I like Sopranos. I like all this stuff. I'm passionate about it. But it's not bone deep. Right? I'm not going to go be a karaoke DJ because I like to sing karaoke. So it's an identity, and it does three things. It aligns what's really there for you. So it brings your life into congruency. It guides you. So there's this, it's almost like somebody's pulling a thread out of your chest. Anyone see Donnie Darko? So you know that scene where that translucent future gets projected? It's like that. It's like being tapped into that and kind of having a sense that your body, your life, your relationships, your career are going to move in that direction. And then it also reveals. So it reveals really the truth of who you are and why you were put here. And I don't say this from a spiritual place necessarily, but it's that knowing, like, oh, I was put here to do the thing. And it's not one thing, it's many things. But the reveal piece is actually ongoing. So you'll, with luck and grit, reveal something new tonight. But another way to think about purpose is that it's a capacity. It's like a muscle, a channel, a throughput, an ongoing process of surfacing the deeper truths and bringing them forth. As opposed to all the stuff that's in the way that says we can't do that, we shouldn't, or we'll look foolish, or we don't have what it takes, or it only works out for Elon Musk. Like those conversations are important. They've got a lot of good information, but that's not purpose. So that's what I mean by purpose. I'll stop there and see if there's any questions on what I've shared thus far. Okay, let's move into the science. We'll just spend a couple of minutes here. So you can find all this at scienceofpurpose.org. Basically, what happens when you connect with your higher purpose, all of these pro-social outcomes start to occur. In your health, your telomeres get stronger, your cellular structures get stronger, and you end up living 7 years longer. These aren't 7 years of staring at the wall in a retirement home. There's like a sense of aliveness to those years. And just by a show of hands, did anyone have like a weird aunt who was just really alive? Or like somebody in their upbringing that was just like, did not care what anyone else thought and was just like, yeah, show of hands. Okay, cool. So I had 3 of those growing up in Chicago. And they were, I come from like a big, like portly family. And they smoked and they drank and they made art and they made love and they cursed and they got sad and they celebrated. They sang, they did stand-up. There was like nothing holding these women back. Like nothing. And they'd be just as likely to tell you you're an amazing child as to tell you to go fuck yourself. They spoke from that place. They just did it. And that was a sharp contrast from what I grew up with in the Chicago suburbs. There's a lot of shuffling, a lot of muddling. And even in a busy city like San Francisco, a lot of muddling, a lot of headphones on, getting to and fro the next thing, to and fro the next meeting, the next deliverable, the next startup, the next party, the next afterburn, whatever the heck. There's a lot of shuffling. And that's not aliveness. It might be novelty, it might be exploration, but it's not genuine aliveness. And so this is what I'm talking about, what kind of infects your persona when purpose starts to come online. As you can imagine, that might show up differently, or you might show up differently in your relationships. But they found that people who know their purpose are regarded as more attractive because of that aliveness. There's that attunement, that kind of inner upwelling that says, yeah, I'm weird, freak flag here. It's just, and it doesn't mean you're going to be everybody's cup of tea. It's not a broadcast of how great I am. It's not a Instagram selfie. It's that narrowcast. It's like, you might be my cup of tea, but I'm not going to compromise. Like, my ship is going this way, you in? So it's that kind of like rootedness that shows up, and when people show up like that in relationships, it becomes really attractive to others. And what they found is that when you're in a relationship, you actually experience love 31% more of the time, and you have better sex. So not the perfunctory relationship sex, the curious, let's be together sex, the long intimate stares, let's try this. So that's how it moves in relationship. And I presume, because most people actually come into the purpose question through the career door. Because in the United States, 70% of us are totally disengaged at work. Just phoning it in. Okay, I'll do the thing for the money, tell the story for the money, show up for the money. And then I get to live my real life in the evenings, weekends, vacations, retirement. So that's not living. That's not aliveness. That's muddling. That's getting through it. And the thing is, it's actually worse abroad. 87% of the global workforce is phoning it in, disengaged. Now, when purpose comes online, you end up having all of these beautiful outcomes. You make more money, you have more wealth, you're more likely to be a leader. And when you are a leader, you're 63% more effective as a leader. That means that there's this infection, because you're connected to what's infecting your soul. And other people get infected by it too. Like, it's not my purpose, but that person's not bullshitting me. They actually care about this. This is connected to who they are, to their deepest wounds, to their childhood. I'll follow them. Now, it also, the pieces that go into this deep sense of productivity are engagement, tenure, fulfillment. All of that starts to come online when you're connected to your purpose. Purpose is now regarded as a number one factor in job satisfaction. More important, actually it's twice as important as the number two thing, which is the effectiveness of the management. So when your purpose comes online and you become connected to who you are, you're more likely to relate to other people's purpose. And that creates all kinds of great outcomes in life and career. So I'll stop there, see if there's any questions so far about what I've just shared. Anyone doubt this? Anyone want to question the eggheads at Harvard and Stanford and McKinsey? Yes?
Yeah, I'm just curious how they come up with these exact percentages.
I'd go there. Yeah, there's qualitative measures, but it's based on some really interesting research that began in the mid-1960s. So two psychologists, Leonard Mahalik and last name's Crumbaugh, but they started to qualitatively assess people's connection to their purpose and then correlate that with all these other outcomes. So they could see that, okay, this person has a purpose score of 6, they have a income of 150, this person has a purpose score of 3, their income's of 110. Yeah, so they're just correlating. It's not I'm not saying it's causal. The research never says causality, but it starts to paint a picture that, oh, okay, maybe this is a best practice. Maybe this is something that's up there with 7 hours of sleep and exercise and being nice to people you live with and all those things. So that's the science. So we're gonna drop into an exercise now.